Welcome to Aiken This Week. I'm Emery Langston. Today my guest is Tim O'Brien, our new communications manager for the city of Aiken. And Tim, while you're no stranger to Aiken and lots of people are familiar with you and your work, I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your background coming in as our new communications manager.
Sure, and it's very good to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me. I am very familiar with Aiken. I've been a South Carolina resident all of my life from the Charleston area, but have called Aiken home for the last 16 years. Raised my two sons here and have had a very good life in Aiken. A year ago I did explore an opportunity. As some opportunities go, it didn't work out too well, but it was a happy accident because as I was looking for where I wanted to be, the place I always want to be, Aiken, had an opportunity, which is this one, to help guide communications for the city of Aiken. So I'm very pleased to be able to do that. Of course, my background that I didn't mention was that I was an editor of one sort or another, managing editor, executive editor, a number of titles at the Aiken Standard for 15 years. So.
Well, we're very glad to have you back in Aiken and now working with the city in your new role. So, Tim, new communications manager, this is a new position for the city. Why did the city feel that this was an important position to have?
Well, and part of this would be my understanding and what I've been told because I was out of town at this point, but in January of 2016, the council met with city manager John Clem and expressed their desire to do a better job of communicating with the residents of the city of Aiken, the people they're elected to serve. Over the years, and especially over the last 10 to 15 years, with the advent of social media and the internet ramping up to the point that it has, everyone has a smartphone in their pocket. Communication has not only become instant and people expect news, information, and updates constantly, but everyone has also become a publisher. If you think about it, 20 years ago, the Aiken Standard, and maybe every once in a while a local television station would feature something about the city or local schools or what was going on in town, and it was kind of a one-way medium. At this point, the city of Aiken has 420 employees involved in a wide variety of activities, everything from youth and adult sports and lifestyle issues, tourism, but then very business-oriented things regarding economic development. When you turn on that water tap, is the water there? Is it clean and safe? The sewer. So it's a very complicated organization with, again, more than 420 employees. Each one of those employees, each one of those many departments that serve the people of Aiken, now are in a position where people want information from them. They have the capacity to provide information, but the technology and the capability kind of outstrip the planning for who's supposed to say what, when. Right. And very often people, when there's a public information officer or a communications manager, people can think of that as a gatekeeper or someone who's trying to be in the middle. I don't think City Council sees it that way, and I certainly don't. My desire is to make sure that the various departments and employees of the city realize that people want to hear from them and want information, but also that we're doing some training internally so that when we say something, we mean it and we know that it's factual and accurate.
Sure, sure. So there's going to be an internal component and an external component.
Absolutely, and that's the other part of it is doing a better job of communicating within our organization. Sure. One thing I didn't mention, I talked about water and sewer and parks and tourism, but police and fire.
Sure.
There are some pretty important responsibilities that the city has, and there are lots of needs to communicate with the public.
So you've kind of given us a big picture overview of that. So kind of drilling down a little bit, your role specifically and what you're going to be doing. You expressed, the that it's not necessarily a gatekeeper, but just expanding and bringing some more awareness. So can you drill down on that a little bit more and talk about your specific role and kind of what the day-to-day is going to look like?
Sure. Day to day, and it's fairly broad, and each day will be a little bit different.
Sure, especially for the communications manager.
Right, which I actually enjoy very much. My newspaper background was very similar to that. But kind of the structure of it is the city has been involved in a number of communications efforts for a long time. There's the city newsletter that goes out with the water bills, and I'll have responsibility for that. Channel 4 and the video presentations, which I'm pleased to say I was involved on the other side, getting that started several years ago. That will fall under what I'm looking at. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, anything else that comes up, as things do come up a lot in that space. And then the website itself. There are many channels to communicate with people, and we have to find people where they are and where they need their information. There are other systems, including kind of the reverse 911 kind of ideas, where we're looking at implementing systems where we can call specific groups or all city residents about emergencies or important topics that we need to get to people directly. So there are a lot of moving pieces. Some of it will be more mundane communications. Some of it's very important, about public safety issues and emergencies that will come up. Some of it will involve communicating city council priorities and making sure that they feel like they're communicating properly what their plans are, so they can get full educated input from the people who they represent.
Sure. You have been in this communication space for a long time, and looking at what is effective communication, what would you say those key ingredients are for effective communication?
The most effective and the most important tent poles of effective communication are truth and accuracy. And that's going to be my primary goal, is to make sure when the city communicates, and when others frankly communicate about the city, that everyone, this is a political environment, and people have opinions, and that's important to how our democracy works. But we have to make sure that everybody's working off the same set of factual information, and that it's accurately being conveyed to the employees of the city. That's the internal component.
Sure.
And then that it is effectively and accurately being conveyed to the people, so they're not guessing,
Right.
and thinking they know something that may be contrary to the actual fact of the situation. And then, some of it will be being able to go out and speak to other publishers, whether they be traditional media or individuals, when there are some facts that may be in question, saying, I'm glad that you're talking about the city, I'm glad that you're communicating, but let's make sure that we agree on what is truthful and what is accurate.
Yeah, that's a big part of the conversation all over
Absolutely.
this day and age. Well, as you're looking at coming in, you're very brand new, I believe just about a week and a half on the job. What do you see as the biggest need in coming into the communications manager position? Kind of what's your top priority, the biggest need that you see that you want to handle?
Okay. Well, there are a couple that kind of run in parallel, but first is organizing and getting a handle on, as I said, all those channels that are out there. There are a variety of people engaged in communication for the city, everywhere from the police department and their PIOs to city manager, that office and the staff there, to the folks in Channel 4, Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. So just kind of building that basic structure of, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it, and doing some communications training with folks about being candid and honest and being responsive to people's requests for information. Because, of course, the city is legally required to provide a lot of information. It's a taxpayer-funded organization. But it's just good business to make sure that you're communicating with people. The other parallel side of that is it's a very exciting time in the city of Aiken. There are a lot of things going on, including, looking down at Whiskey Road and the congestion there, but the proposals to redevelop the mall property, which will be key to the south side. We've got the recreation facilities that are soon to be constructed on the north side of Aiken. And of course, there's been a lot of discussion about downtown revitalization and redevelopment, economic development issues. So just looking at all of those priorities and making sure that we are effectively communicating what the city's plans are and are not will be key as well.
Sure. Looking at or knowing the environment that we're in nationally, and it all kind of comes down locally too, the challenges and obstacles. And as you were expressing early in our conversation, it's such a fast pace. Everything is instant. People want their information instantly. And you have these various components. So what is the biggest obstacle? What is the biggest challenge in facing doing everything that you're hoping to do?
Well, and I'll go back to the prior answer where I talked about truthfulness and accuracy.
Sure.
You throw in the speed factor, and that's part of the reason why the city may, or the city council may have said, we need somebody to kind of look at this. And you've got things coming out so fast from so many different directions as far as messages and questions, complaints, criticisms, even compliments. Is the city doing enough fast enough to make sure that the truth of the situation is there? Because through no ill intent, someone can think that they know and have a very good reason to think that they have a fact that they then share on social media. And if you let that go through lunchtime to this morning,
Yes.
You've got a big fire that you may have to put out because it may not be based in fact. It may not be accurate. The speed factor is the real challenge. We have to be nimble at the city, and we have to be responsive to it, and we have to make sure that we're setting the record straight. And where there is room for criticism, which there certainly is with any organization, one of the keys to this is not a public relations position. It's communications, and the city wants to evaluate itself honestly. And where things go well, the city wants to blow its horn, and it's part of effectively governing the people of Aiken, that if something is not quite right or not quite up to snuff, as an organization, we need to be honest about that and look at what we need to do to make it better the next time.
Sure. Over your career, you have seen, I'm sure, just an entire evolution of how, what we've just been talking about, our whole conversation about how information is gathered, how information is put out there. And I'm sure that it's very fluid at the same time, and working in a position like this. But what do you see as your long-term goals for the position?
I think that, along the same lines of what we've been discussing, long-term, and I have seen, especially the city, from both sides of this, from the traditional media, working as a newspaper editor, and just as everything is developed and really watched as newspapers are still very relevant and very important and I love them. But the kind of the share of the message is changing. You know, how many people are reading the newspaper is changing. And in a lot of ways, I hate that, but I can't sit around and moan about it. I've got to move forward. I think the goal would be to get to a point where basically the city leadership and the people of the city all feel like they know what's going on and they know what truth is, and they feel free to express their opinions, but all based on a set of well laid out facts, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that is a wonderful goal.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful goal. Tim, as we're wrapping up, are there any thoughts that we haven't covered today that you would like to share about coming in your new position?
Well, I think this is a good opportunity. You know, I have spent the last week and a half, as you said, meeting with lots of city employees and city departments. This is a good opportunity to both to the public and to the media and to the employees of the city of Aiken to say that I really want to be a resource for all of the above. And I invite all of those people to be in contact with me and let me know where there are issues that we may need to communicate better. And part of it will be the story ideas. There are lots of great things going on in the city of Aiken. There are issues that we want to be able to cover as a city because we do have the capability to become a publisher here on, you know, with our video efforts and Channel 4, in print press releases and social media things. We want to be able to highlight that. So please contact me and let me know what's going on.
Very good. Well, Tim, we're very excited to have you on board in your new position as our communications manager, and appreciate you spending a few minutes today to highlight what that's going to look like and what we can look forward to. So thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me, Emery.
And we thank you for joining us for Aiken this week, and we'll see you next time.